Early this morning, U.S. authorities arrested the alleged top leader of the vicious MS-13 gang for the East Coast. They've, of course, been all up and down the East Coast, West Coast as well, absolutely terrorizing families. Now, this arrest happened in Virginia. It was just miles away from our nation's capital. And Fox News is getting an exclusive look at the operation that led to the capture. Attorney General Pam Bondi says that this coordinated operation between the DOJ and FBI is only at its beginning.
MS-13, they are organized, they are violent, they are committing homicides throughout our country. They are one of the most dangerous gangs in our country, and we are going to fight until they are completely dismantled.
Hello, everyone. This is Outnumbered. I'm Kayleigh McEnany. Here's my co-host, Emily Campagno. Also joining us, Molly Line, Fox News correspondent, Cheryl Casoni, Fox Business anchor and host of American Dream Home, and Charles Payne, host of Making Money on Fox Business. But first, let's go live to David Spunt, who has been gathering these details. I've been reading them ferociously in my inbox. David, what have you learned?
Well, Kayleigh, this guy is 24 years old. This happened in a residential neighborhood in suburban Virginia. We were there for the arrest, and he's the alleged head of the MS-13 for the East Coast of the U.S., one of the top 3 MS-13 leaders allegedly in the country. Authorities say he's from El Salvador. He was living in the United States illegally. This arrest happened before the sun came up. We were there exclusively to watch it unfold. We joined the Attorney General Pam Bondi, also the FBI Director Kash Patel. You see him right there watching screens, and during an early morning briefing, SWAT teams went in to make the arrest. Bondi, Patel, myself, and others watched this happen on monitors. We can't show specifically was on the monitors, but we saw cameras from multiple angles, ground and air.
This is what can happen when you put good cops in good places to take on bad guys. And America should be watching this. And we are proud to be here standing with these brave warriors.
Joining the FBI was the ATF, Virginia State Police, ICE, and the Prince William County Local Police. They do this kind of thing multiple times a week, Kayleigh, but this guy happens to be, as I said, in the top 3 leadership, according to authorities. Now, the reason they had a SWAT team and military vehicles, they expected him to be armed. Luckily, no one, though, was harmed.
All of our law enforcement officers are safe. That was the #1 thing. They're safe. They executed a clean, safe operation, and the bad guys in custody. And thanks to the FBI, we got one of the worst of MS-13 off the streets this morning.
A couple of hours after the arrest, Bondi, Patel, and Governor Glenn Youngkin in Virginia held a news conference to highlight the new Virginia DOJ FBI task force.
What this task force over the course of the last 4 weeks represents is the model of federal resources, stately resources, and local resources coming together in order to eradicate the drug and terrorist networks that exist. And I use the word terrorist because the illegal drug gangs, MS-13, Tren de Aragua, they are international terrorist organizations, and they are resident right here.
Authorities, Kayleigh, are not releasing his name yet until he's officially charged in court, but he is in custody as authorities try to learn as much as possible. Back to you.
And we know there's all sorts of reasons that we don't know the name, but we will know it in short order. Thank you very much, David Spunt.
Thank you.
Emily, this is a huge accomplishment by the administration. I love the way Pam Bondi framed it. It's a 24-year-old, and she framed it as one of the top leaders of one of the most organized gangs in the world, MS-13. That really puts into perspective the kind of group we're dealing with.
Hallmarked by their propensity for extreme violence. And they've been described as a cafeteria-style type gang, meaning that they don't specialize in one thing. They do it all. And they do it all with the one common denominator of brutal, horrific violence. And I thought so that we could humanize a little bit of this. The notion that that person is only 23-year-olds means nothing for this, because the ages there's no bearing on the violence that they commit. So just a few years ago here in New York on Long Island, I'm sure we all remember when a 17-year-old lured 5 children to a field where they were hacked to death with machetes and knives and chisels in a horrific display of violence on the assumption that they were operating with a rival gang. Someone that was purported to be cooperating with police was beaten with a rifle, had all of his fingers broken with pliers, and then suffocated with a plastic bag, among other things. They traffic in human smuggling. They traffic in systemic rape. They traffic in witness intimidation. And the violence is so massively disproportionate to the underlying offense. It is egregious beyond standards and frankly nauseating to read. And I could only get through, I will be honest, a few of the pleadings because they were so nauseating in the excruciating detail. And I just want to make one final point, which is this, that just yesterday we lost the Marysville police officer, Osmar Rodarty. He was a U.S. Army vet, and it was in the execution of a warrant, a multi-county warrant combating these transnational drug cartels. Good people are losing their lives. They are losing their lives for this country, for the safety of Americans. And it is an all-out war against these brutal cartels, and MS-13 needs to be extinguished.
Yeah, God bless that family and that heroic work. This is a little bit to Emily's point of MS-13, what they're about, some of the news coverage. Let's review it. This is from the past few years.
An MS-13 gang member has been found guilty of killing multiple people in Northern Virginia.
Federal court documents describe the gruesome murders which took place from 2018 to 2022. Stabbings, shootings, limbs cut off and discarded or buried.
An MS-13 gang leader is sentenced to life in prison for ordering the murders of several people. Melvin Canales Saldana was a second-ranking member of the CTO's clique, which had a strong presence in Northern Virginia. In spring of 2019, he ordered the murder of several rival gang members. When his MS-13 members could not find them, they just targeted random civilians instead.
Cheryl, this is not a rogue actor. These are an organized group. They are terrorists and have been terrorizing the country, but in particular, Northern Virginia. They've had a massive presence.
They have, and those news reports that you just played show that. Emily, I'm so glad you brought up about Long Island. Remember back in 2016, or I think it was end of 2015, those two young girls, they were 15 and 16 years old. And that's the first time I remember hearing about the brutality of MS-13. They were hatcheted. I mean, it was awful. And there are thousands of them still in the United States today that are operating and are terrorizing these suburbs, whether it is Virginia or Maryland or Long Island, Brentwood, New York. And so the fact that we still have not dealt with the brutality and we haven't had more arrests over the last several years, I think is really the saddest part of this story. They've been operating out of L.A. since the 80s. We've known about them. And one of their biggest sites of operations, the United States of America.
Yeah, this is a win for America, Charles. And when you look at what the administration did, they have put together this task force. It's the first of its kind, came together in early March. This is just a slice of what they've done. And just in the state of Virginia, 28 arrests of MS-13, 19 of TDA, 27 TOC, that's transnational organized crime, 7 in other gangs. This is just in Virginia. And my head went to where Cheryl's was, which is, where was this during the Biden administration? This has taken place in a few weeks. Why was there not this task force? Because surely we can all unite around getting gang members out of our country.
Yeah. You're tempted to say there's a new sheriff in town, but the fact is there's simply a sheriff in town. Right? I mean, right? That's the point. It was non-existent before. The Justice Department was being used for more political things, things like politics, not this. And I think the really thing that everyone's kind of touched on is, when I was growing up, you had local gangs. New York, you had the Latin Kings and those kind of things, and neighborhood gangs. These are organized, right? They're shipped into our country, and they're organized, and also they're not just in cities, right? This was a sort of an urban problem years ago, but now this is a suburban problem, and this is a rural America problem. This is an existential threat to all Americans right now. Before, again, 20, 30 years ago, it was sort of an urban thing. Now it's an American threat.
It is. Molly, one of the consistent themes that I've heard from Pam Bondi and Kash Patel is returning the heroism and the spotlight back to law enforcement. Every time it's put on them, they eschew it and send it right back to law enforcement, who remain nameless. They're the heroes in all of this. Kash Patel, this is what can happen when you put good cops in good places to take on bad guys.
Yeah, and this speaks to really the collaboration that's going on here. It's a multi-agency, multi-day, multi-week in this particular case. This is sort of the cherry on top, this individual being brought into custody. This has been going on for weeks there in Northern Virginia, and there's been a swath of agencies involved, ATF, Marshals, Drug Enforcement, U.S. Customs and Border Protection, all working together to make this happen. They've brought hundreds of people into custody, and this isn't the first member of MS-13. This started at the beginning of the month. There were others that were brought in, and it's worth noting that many of those arrested as part of this effort were previously convicted. So malicious wounding and larceny, previously convicted for carrying a concealed weapon, trespassing. Another Salvadoran wanted for authorities in El Salvador for aggravated extortion. So this isn't the first bad guy, and this speaks to, as you mentioned, this multi-agency effort.
Yeah, and the previous convictions, makes you wonder why they weren't kept in jail as long as humanly possible.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.